How we're doing?
Yeah.
All right. I don't like to ask people this, but my first question for you is going to be about like your music and the sound of your music, because I feel like that's the fools with the children next door. I feel like with your songs, you know, you have parts where it's like you kind of, you know, you'll like when you listen to it, like you kind of hear this like one part, and you're like, oh, this is very like upbeat and melodic, like it can be almost like twee, and then it just changes into like something like a completely different like genre.
Yeah.
Like just within the same song.
Yeah.
So it's like I have no idea how you made, you know, it's like all these little like pieces of different like genres within like a verse. You know?
Yeah. I think for me, like, there's no other album I could have written. This is the only thing at that time that I could have written. I can't set my sights on a certain way to write a song, if that makes sense, and then do that. I have to explore, and it's a generative process. So if I create a beat or some sort of percussion of some kind, and that excites me, then that's going to be the thing that brings me back to writing more of the song. And so I'm just following whatever interests me as I'm working my way through the song. I'll basically write, you know, one part, and then I ask myself the question, what happens next? And I don't fully have control over that, because it's just whatever I do and it fits, I'm good with that. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's generative. It's an exploration. I also just listen to a lot of different music, and so I'm not shooting for a genre. I'm not shooting to sound like a specific person. Listening to music and writing music are one and the same thing for me.
It's so hard though, because it's like the way the album flows just really, really works. And like for me, it's like I always feel like when people try to mix genres, it doesn't usually work. Like when I don't want to call them out, but when you do like ska and then like hardcore at like the same time, like you know, it's like here's the ska part and then here's hardcore and then you know like that, like it's like the oil and water like type of idea. And it's like so to have it where it's like, you know, okay, we're gonna put like half of a second of like this genre like right here, and it's just to make it work. I don't know how you did it, but
I think it's like there are certain things that remain consistent throughout the whole album. Like it's like I use the same type of reverb the whole time. My voice is sung a certain way throughout the whole album. There are certain things that make it glued together and make it one statement. But it's not a concept album. It's not something where I'm like, I'm just going to hammer home this one idea or experiment with this one instrument. I view this album and every album I make as a snapshot of myself in time. It's like a picture of myself. So like, you know, 5 years from now I may look back on it and be able to access this time in my life by listening back to my own album. And I've always loved that about music. You can really tap into somebody's life in that way.
And it's weird because you can do that as like a listener too, because it's like, you know, you could listen to something now like that you listen to like when you were in high school and it'll take you like back to like that time exactly.
Oh my God.
You know?
I wrote an entire album when I was like 17, and it is very difficult for me to listen to. It makes me cringe inside of my, you know, I like a turtle into a shell. But I'm glad I did it because I can access myself, you know, and I can access another artist, you know. I can listen, like you're saying, like as a listener, I love that about music. But like I can listen to a Duke Ellington song and it brings me back in time. It's not as obvious as, like with a photograph, I feel like I look at an old photograph and I can create distance between myself and that photograph. I can be like, oh, it's blurry and it's black and white, so that's from the olden times, the olden days. But with music, I can listen to Duke Ellington and pretty much be there in the room, even if it was recorded in like 1938 or something. I just love that about music. It's really cool.
Now your new album that just came out is on record.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to have your music in a physical state?
Really important. and I don't think I knew how important it was until I did it. It's the first time I've ever had anything I've ever made on vinyl, and I think it's that same, I don't know, it fits in with that idea of a photograph of yourself in time. It's like a physical proof that you did this thing. Now, obviously, I can't do that every single year because it's cost prohibitive. It's expensive, and it takes a while to put together vinyl. But for this one, this album took me like 3 years to make. So I was like, let's do this. Let's actually go through that process. Let's learn about how to self-release like this. And yeah, having a physical copy was really important to celebrating the music and I don't know. Yeah. That's what I would say.
It's like so, like there's so many people that just have, access to put just music out there, like with SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very much like, it's like a level of like, I want to say like justification, but it's like that level of like, achievement, like that way that like, okay, this means something and this is something that, you do that like not everybody can do, because I mean, there was a time it was like really long, there was like a really long line like waiting to get vinyl made, and then having the money in being like, oh, well, I'm not going to pay that for this,
No.
So, I mean, just, that idea of like, hey, I have GarageBand, I'm going to make some songs and put them on SoundCloud. It's like just knowing that it's like, I guess like, not serious, but just,
Yeah, I think it's like I've done all those things. I've done the like, I work on something for 2 years and then I sink it into the lake that is the internet. I just like push it into the water, and I'm like, all right, I guess that's it. The album's out there. And this time I really wanted it to be a process. And that meant playing lots of shows, playing, here in New Haven. This is like the first time I've really toured with my music, even though I've been playing music for, I don't know, like nearly 15, 17 years. And so, yeah, I think this felt important for some reason. It felt important to get out there and to really sort of, I think of it as like ringing the bell or something, just like really announcing this one. This is also the most personal music I've ever written, and it was hard work. So I wanna really ring that bell. Yeah.
So this is something that I used to do a lot, but I haven't done in a long time. You have a song on your album called Running.
Yes.
And it's about running and walking. And I just think about the Cary Grant movie, Walk, Don't Run. Have you ever seen that?
I have not. Now I have to.
That's all that reminds me of. I'm like, oh, this is like that movie. Because it's like this whole, like, Cary Grant, like basically playing Cary Grant, but he's like staying in a hotel with all the other Olympians, and it's like the whole movie you're trying to figure out like what he's doing in the Olympics and like why he's there and all the shenanigans of the time and everything, and then you realize he's an Olympic walker.
He's like a fast walker, basically.
He does like the speed walking.
Amazing.
Like the whole thing, like that's
That's really hard to do, by the way.
Yes.
To run as fast as you can with both your feet being on the ground, or one of your feet being on the ground at all times. It's hard to do.
And I think
speed walking stuff.
It's fun when you can have like, a song where it like reminds you of like a movie like that, where it's like kind of like tied in with the film too, but it's like that movie's like forever old.
So for you, it acts as like its own association with that movie for you. I love that.
Because it's about running, but it's also about, even though it's called running, it's also about walking.
Yes.
So I'm like, like Cary Grant. I'm like, wait a minute, how do I know that?
like clearly I wrote a song about Cary Grant.
Yeah, this movie, I mean, it should have been on the soundtrack. Like, what were they thinking back then?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
What do you think, as a musician, on your side, like, is the best way for people who listen to music, like, to support like your music and things, like musicians and artists, like in general?
Yeah. So it's like, the way I think about it is this: if I was given a stipend to do this, I'd be fine. Like I would do this regardless of chasing anything. I don't need to chase. I'm not ambitious about success or anything. So support is the only reason that money enters the equation is because in this sort of crazy capitalist world that we live in, we need money to keep going. So, buying my album, that's a way to support me. If I would, in other words, I would do this all for free if I lived in a socialist utopia. I would write music regardless of whether there was a carrot at the end of it. I just love doing this, and the only way to make it sustainable is to sell your art. And but when people buy my music, it's not so much like I'm sitting there like counting the dollars with my eyes wide. It's more a signal from that person that they care about the music and that they saw something in it that was special to them enough to take their scarce resources and put them into buying the record. And each time that happens, I am genuinely moved by that. That is a genuinely beautiful thing for someone to do. And if someone, even if somebody just who doesn't have the means to buy a expensive vinyl record calls me up and says, I listened to your music and it really meant a lot to me. So in other words, just yes, I think for every artist, buying their music is great. If you can't do that, listen to them, put them in your playlist, tell your friends. There are a lot of great bands out there that don't have a label behind them, that don't have a PR team behind them, that don't have access to all the keys to the gate-kept spaces out there. And the more that we support each other and spread the word about one another, you sort of create your own community from the ground up. I think that's really important. That's where I'm at.
Do you think we'll ever see a kind of space what Bandcamp kind of was supposed to be, where it's more, just a place where it's you're going and you're selling stuff, but then, because I think, I don't know who would do it or how they would do it, but I think there needs to be a version of Bandcamp that also is social media tied in with it, so that way it could be more of just the artists talking to people who are there that are also interested in music.
Yes.
And then that way, it's hey, I'm this part of it, and I'm in the punk part of it. So if you're, I'm in a punk band, so listen to my punk record, and all people want punk, go there or whatever. And then, that way. But then in a way too, where it's they're self-supportive, so that the musicians take the money instead of. Because I know a lot of people have had problems with Bandcamp where. Bandcamp takes too much, and it's
10%,
they're they have an order, and Bandcamp just takes the money, and they're and now I don't have money to ship this, so what do I do?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've had to turn into a little businessman because I don't have a label, so I'm self-releasing, so I'm trying to price the vinyl fairly and try to figure out Bandcamp's cut and all that stuff. But to your question, I think it's just weird that we have to rely on these billion-dollar Silicon Valley places like Meta in order to get in touch with each other. Now, all that being said, this whole show and all the people I've met, including you, it's all been via these platforms. So, but yeah, if there was a version of Bandcamp where you were able to message everybody and buy their music and buy tickets to the shows, that'd be a beautiful thing. Because I think it is, the good thing about the internet is people are really connected, and I feel I have one friend here in New Haven, my buddy Ben, who is connected to part of this community, and I feel almost parasocially I'm part of this community, but that's only because of the internet, and that's beautiful, so I don't want that to go away. But yeah, if there's a way to get these really creepy companies out of it, that would be cool. I just don't know how we get there. Maybe Bandcamp was headed in that direction, but even the people who found a place like Bandcamp get tempted by the golden chests that they're handed over to sell their beautiful things. So, but the thing is, like, I could spend a million years trying to promote my music or get the word out there on social media, and then I play a show and I meet actual human beings like yourself, and I remember instantly that actual, like, face-to-face interaction is 20 million times more important than whatever interaction I have online. And, no, that's cliche, but it's true. It's absolutely true.
Like, I'm way more likely to buy, like, merch, like a t-shirt or like a record or something when you're at a show and it's actually there, like, in front of you, versus like going on Bandcamp. Because one of the reasons is, like, Bandcamp is very, like, overwhelming because you see a lot of things that you may want to buy at the same time.
Yes.
So you're not making choices, but then it's like you wait for it for shipping and stuff like that too. Whereas, like, you go to a show, you're there, you're in the moment, you see the person, you're like, I like this music, this was a great show, like, how much is the shirt? I don't care, take my money, like that sort of thing. So
it's like, and it's like their souls, like you see a soul like get up on stage and like you connect with that person, and then you're like, that person seems cool. I really enjoyed that show. I'm gonna throw them some dollars, or even regardless of the money, I would like to take their piece of their artwork home, their music home with me. Walk right up to the merch table, and there you go. It's that simple.
Because I'm one of those people where I have a lot of cassettes, but I don't have a lot of records.
Yeah.
And so it's like, for me, like, listening to a cassette is easy. But, like, listening to a record is a production. Yeah. So when I buy a record, like, I'm very specific, like, very choosy about what I do, because I'm not just going to, like, go buy, because records are more expensive than cassettes anyway.
Yeah. Almost twice more expensive.
But it's just, for me to put on a record, it's like, and I mean, you buy, like, 4 records a week, it's like $100 or more. So buy 4 cassettes a week, it's like the price of a record. But so, I mean, for me to put on a record and stuff like that is like a big show, so it's like, it's got to kind of be like something where it's like special that I want to buy. So it's like, usually when you see that band and you're like, this is going to be, I honestly think the last record I bought was like earlier this year. I bought the new Maggot Heart record, which is like really good.
I gotta check it out.
And I think that was the last one that I bought, and I was just like, this is really good, and I've been listening to it
like this is worth my worth it right now.
Yeah, it's like worth like having it as a physical form, and and sometimes I just feel like, I've listened to this enough on Spotify that I feel bad, and now I want to buy it because,
like I have exceeded the number of plays I would have done if I owned this, and it was like 1995, and my only means of listening to it was a cassette. Like, like I've exceeded that number, so it's time to buy this.
Eventually you feel bad, like, you're like, I feel like, I'm listening to this so many times that you're only getting like 50 cents from me or something like that.
I put some reps into this one,
It's like, you should be getting so much more. And I know Bandcamp used to have a thing, but I haven't seen it in a while, where if you streamed on Bandcamp too many times, it would stop you. It would be like, you played this enough times, now you have to buy the downloader or whatever. And I don't think they do that. I haven't seen that for a really long time. But I mean, that's a good thing too, just because,
just a reminder.
Like, why not be like, hey, we noticed you streamed this album on Spotify, like, 400 times in the last week. Why don't you buy a shirt? Like,
seems like you like it.
Like, give them a pop-up of like merch or something. Be like, go,
Totally.
But if you sold the shirt through Spotify, you probably get like 30 cents for it and stuff. So I don't know how
Spotify
that works.
Is like a completely. The streaming services are a completely unsustainable. It's just an unsustainable system. And I take part in it. I'm not going to sit on my high horse and say I don't use it all the time. But we need to find a way to pay people better. And I think they have that capacity. But
like, I don't understand like what they're doing that makes them like so much money, but then, you know, the people who are actually doing the work, you know, like make like no money. It's like, because without the musicians, Spotify has nothing. So it's kind of like, you know, you need them, so why not pay them better? You know, it's like they obviously can. Like,
they treat Spotify, the way that these companies get away with it is they treat it like they're a consignment store almost. And they're like, we're just providing a room for you to sell your wares, and we'll give you commission or something like that. But I've increasingly seen a lot of discourse around the idea that like every single person who's on Spotify, who has their music on Spotify, is an employee of Spotify, and no company would get away with treating their employees the way that Spotify treats their employees. So I think that's an interesting thing to think about, because, it's like if we, like you said, if we all took a walk, we all took our music away from it, it would collapse and lose value, and the company would put a padlock on the door and call it a day. So there's something about musicians that it can be tough for us all to collectivize, I think. And the people who are doing really well on Spotify probably don't want the party to end, you know, to some degree. But it's really going to take those people who are benefiting from the model to join hands with the people who aren't benefiting, which is like the vast majority of people who have music on.
Like 2% who are making good money out of everyone on there.
Exactly. I haven't gotten a check from Spotify, no.
It's weird because I listen to your album on Spotify in my car. But I listen to it at Bandcamp at home. So
that's good.
I don't know what that means.
I have no... Any way that someone wants to listen to my music, please. Please, yes. Amen. Whatever works. Absolutely.
What do we have for time?
Yeah, what do we got?
That's good. That's 22 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I think I'm probably set to go on pretty soon.
Seems like a good place to stop.
Hey, this is great.